Hey, families. Just wanted to hop in here in the middle of the week and just say a quick word to you. This is a whole new territory that we're in. I know as a church, we're trying to figure out how do we do church in a digital age that we no longer have people around us to engage with, to teach, to talk to. And so for me, I want your spiritual growth. I want your hearts to be good. And so, what I'm going to try to over the next several weeks, we don't know how long this is going to go on, to hop in and to provide some type of teaching or engagement. And so, today, what we have is we have a short teaching segment here with two of our high school students, Cory and Andrew Headley, who have spent a better part of a day putting some teaching together, some questions. So, there's a couple ways we'd love for you to engage with this. Number one, we would really love for you as a family to take this teaching, to spend a few minutes in your living room or the kitchen table to work through this video. There'll be some pauses that you can ask, some questions that you can have some dialogue. It'll be super simple to just hit pause to facilitate a conversation around your dinner table with your family. And as we work through this passage from Matthew chapter 13 that our students have put together, that's one way to engage. The second way to engage would be for groups of students to, if they are with each other, to work through this together, or possibly to use FaceTime or Zoom or some of these different technologies that we have to stay connected with each other in some way. So during this season, we're asking questions about finances. We're asking questions about school. When will we go back to school? We're asking questions about our health. Everything is upside down. And yet right in the middle of that, God stays faithful and He stays good. And so we want to step into that in some simple ways throughout the week. And so that's enough from me. I'm going to turn it over to Andrew and to Cory, and may be blessed by your time with them. Thank you.
Hi guys, how's it going? My name is Cory. This is Andrew. We hope you are all doing well. Today we're coming to you from our church. It's empty right now, but we just wanted to talk to you a little bit today about the parable of the weeds.
Today we'll be reading from Matthew chapter 13, verses 24 through 30. Jesus told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while everyone was sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat, and then went away. When the wheat sprouted and formed heads, then the weeds also appeared. The owner's servants came to him and said, "Sir, didn't you sow good seed in your field? Where then did the weeds come from?" "An enemy did this," he replied. The servants asked him, "Do you want us to go and pull them up?" "No," he answered, "because while you are pulling the weeds, you may root up the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. At that time, I will tell the harvesters, first, collect the weeds and tie them in bundles to be burned. Then, gather the wheat and bring them into my barn." So today we were hoping to not only have a conversation amongst ourselves, but also have a conversation with you guys and foster conversation in your guys' households. So today, the whole layout of this is going to be, we're going to go through and read a section, and then we're going to ask questions, at which time you should probably pause the video and discuss amongst yourselves. There may be some differing opinions, as we're going to come back and we're going to tell you what we think about it, but differing opinions is only a good thing and can help us sharpen our own opinions. So Cory, with that being said, would you go ahead and read verse 24?
Jesus told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field.
Wow. So the kingdom of heaven, it's kind of a tough thing to grasp, right?
Yes.
So for you guys at home, in your opinion, what is the kingdom of heaven?
Welcome back. We hope you guys all had good conversation about what this big topic of the kingdom of heaven entails. So I would like to go and ask you, Andrew, what do you believe the kingdom of heaven is?
Personally, Cory, I think in simple terms, I think the kingdom of heaven entails a world where everything is the way that God intended it to be.
I agree. And think about how great that'd be if we were living in the kingdom of heaven where things like poverty and diseases, especially like this coronavirus, were non-existent. So let's go ahead and connect this back to the parable and see what Jesus has to say about the kingdom of heaven.
So going back to verse 24, Jesus told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while everyone was sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. When the wheat sprouted and formed heads, then the weeds also appeared. So, Cory, in this text that we just read, we begin to see this infiltration of the enemy into this kingdom of heaven. So in your opinion, who is the enemy and who's the farmer?
So, Andrew, I think that the enemy would be Satan and that the farmer would be God.
You know, Cory, I'd really have to agree with you there. That kind of leads us into our next questions, though. So in the text, it specifically mentions that the enemy came at night while everyone was sleeping. So with that being said, the first question I asked you, Cory, and also the audience, is in what ways may you be asleep to the actions of Satan into sabotaging your life right now? And also, my second question would be, what are some examples of those weeds that he may be planting in your field?
So you can all take a minute to pause and talk through these questions yourselves.
Welcome back. Cory, would you like to take it away?
Yes. I think when we hear the word sleeping, it's basically being unaware. And in this scenario, being unaware to the world around us, which would be some influences in our lives, friends maybe, could be distractions like being too busy, or even being on our phones too much in social media, which I think many of us can relate to. So I would like to go and ask you, Andrew, what are some weeds in your lives and as teens as a population?
So I think generally speaking, I think the big three in teens' lives would be drugs, sex, and alcohol. But I think I would rather focus on the more subtle, smaller things like identity, self-image, self-esteem, anxiety, depression. Like those things can be really strangling to a blossom of a plant that is someone's faith. I think personally, I think pride is a big one for me. And I know for a fact that that can really go in and twist faith and can twist my faith personally. But I think let's get back into the parable. Could you go ahead and read through 28?
The owner's servants came to him and said, "Sir, didn't you sow good seed in your field? Where then did the weeds come from?" "An enemy did this," he replied. The servants asked him, "Do you want us to go and pull them up?" So in this section, I'd like to ask you all and Andrew, what does God desire our response to be to this question that he asks? And what is your immediate response? So go ahead and take a minute. You want to pause the video and talk among that amongst yourselves. Welcome back. Andrew, would you like to elaborate on the question?
Yes, Cory, I'd love to. So you asked, what would my initial response to the question of whether I should pull up the weeds or not, and then God's response, and then the contrast. Unfortunately, I think that I would say my initial gut reaction would be that I should pull up the weeds. And unfortunately, God goes on to answer that no, that it's not our place to do so. And I say that, yes, that I thought that I should. My gut reaction is because I'm a pretty controlling guy. And so when I see somebody that's struggling with sin, I'm going to do almost anything I can to help them. And that fosters a lot of times where I overstep my bounds or I do something that it's not my place to do so. And that causes a lot of pain. As he goes on to say, he says that when you pull up weeds, you could also accidentally pull out some wheat or do harm to that crop. And I've seen that firsthand. Some of it my fault, some of it not. But when you go and pull out a weed, it's pretty aggressive and it does damage. So there's a lot of collateral damage that comes with that. So not only are you trying to eradicate the sin, you're also doing damage to the crop of the wheat itself. So that leads to a lot of faith shattered, people walking away from faith, a lot of hurt. And I mean, I think that's extremely present, and it's a huge problem that churches face today of trying to get the truth out and lead people in the right direction, but also not to say something that could cause people to move away from the church or move away from their faith.
I really like what you're saying there, because there is that middle ground where ripping out the weeds not only hurts their faith possibly, but also many relationships found in church. But if we just celebrate or even ignore that the weeds are even there and don't nourish the weeds, then that could be a big problem too. And our job as servants is to nourish that wheat. Would you like to go ahead and wrap up the parable?
Yes, I would. So starting in verse 29, "No," he answered, "because while you are pulling the weeds, you may root up the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. At that time, I will tell the harvesters, first, collect the weeds and tie them in bundles to be burned. Then gather the wheat and bring it into my barn."
Thank you for joining us today. We really think we got a lot out of this, and we hope you got something too. This parable is complicated, and we may never know all the intricacies of it, but here are 4 things we do know.
The first thing that I'd like to highlight is that the kingdom of heaven is here. Jesus brought that with him, and that gives us hope as teenagers and young adults. It gives us hope that through all this pain and tribulations that everything's going to turn out all right, and we're going to turn out to be one of those wheat that make it into his barn.
And also, I want to highlight that Satan is here. He will attack in the night just like he did in this parable. And our job is to stay awake and to be aware of the battle that's happening every day around us.
It's also, I'd like to add on to that, I think that it's also important to know that there's weeds that are trying to suffocate us. And that being said, Satan is using almost everything that he can to get us to stop from being that wheat and growing into that wheat that God designed us to be. That makes it so much more important to stay woke, for lack of better words, and to understand the influences around us and how those are affecting us.
But ultimately, in the end, God has got us. And the farmer will let the wheat grow, and he'll take care of them in the end. So we don't have to worry about that. And I think that is very comforting.
It's very comforting to know that God is the Alpha. That being said, I would just like to thank everyone for tuning in. I can't wait to see you guys next week. Like Cory said, I hope that you guys really got something out of this, because I know that me and him did. That being said, we're going to sign off until next week, and we'll see you then.